Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are doing our weekend review, as always, as I tend to do every Saturday. I am a little bit behind because this is the Saturday that I usually post it on, so I'm having to film everything because I was just bleh this week. So I had to buckle down yesterday and type down all the information. Anyway, let's kind of get into this, shall we? As always, let's start with sports. Right now, it is the off season for collegiate basketball and collegiate football. Collegiate baseball is going on. So let's take a look at collegiate baseball scores. College baseball rankings. There we go. College baseball. Division 1, top 25. Division 1 in baseball. Let's look at it. Alright. If my computer will work with me because it doesn't want to scroll properly. It doesn't want to scroll properly. There we go. Top 25 college baseball. Number 25, California. Number 24, Dallas Baptist. 23, Indiana State. 22, Creighton. 21, Baylor. Number 20, NC State. Number 19, UC Santa Barbara. Number 18, Texas A&M. Number 17, Miami. Number 16, Oregon State. Number 15, North Carolina. Number 14, Ole Miss. Number 13, West Virginia. Number 12, LSU. Number 11, Louisville. Number 10, we're looking at the top 10 now. I'll start giving the records with the top 10. Number 10, East Carolina with a record of 23-15. At number 9, Oklahoma State with a record of 36-18. Number 8, Texas Tech with a record of 39-17. Number 7, Georgia with a record of 44-15. Number 6, Georgia Tech with a record of 41-17. And number 5, Arkansas with a record of 41-17. Number 4, Stanford with a record of 41-11. Number 3, Mississippi State with a record of 46-13. Number 2, Vanderbilt with a record of 49-10. And number 1 right now, UCLA with a record of 47-8. That was as of May the 28th. Of course, today is June the 1st. So, those are pretty current as far as the baseball Division I top 25 standings. Let's now look at the playoffs. First, we'll look at the NBA playoffs, which I believe we are now in the finals. NBA playoffs. NBA Media Ventures LLC presents NBA.com/playoffs. And it's just taking its time loading on up, so I'm gonna wait for it. Yeah. Sorry guys, I'm just in that kind of mood today, so being goofy. Alright, the NBA, yep, we are in the finals, NBA. And currently it sets the Toronto Raptors lead the Golden State Warriors 1-0. So that's currently how the NBA finals are looking. Now, let's look at NHL playoffs, which they're in the Stanley Cup finals as well. So baseball and ice hockey season is about the same. Not baseball. Basketball and ice hockey season have the same starting and ending point pretty much. You know, there's always going to be a bit of variability, but pretty much they're at the same time. As it currently stands, the St. Louis Blues and the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals are tied 1-1. I believe I'm looking at that correctly. Yep. Bruins and Blues tied 1-1. And that's currently how the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs look. Now, let's look at Major League Baseball standings. There we go. My legs were sticking to the seat. Let's get into actual standings, people. There we go, baseball standings, and it's the baseball season. Today we have a game between da-da-da. And I'm just being a dork. Alright. Baseball standings. In the American League East, the New York Yankees lead the division with a record of 37-19. Although Tampa Bay is back by only a game and a half. And it follows Boston, Toronto, and Baltimore in that order. So the Yankees lead, but Tampa Bay is hanging on. Of course, it's still early in the season. Only about 55 games in, so yeah, still got over 100 games to go. Let's look at the American League Central. The Minnesota Twins lead with a record of 38-18. Their closest competition is a tie between the Chicago White Sox and the Cleveland Indians at 10.5 games behind each. So, Minnesota's way out in front, but Chicago and Cleveland are fighting for the second spot in the AL East, or not East, but Central. And the AL West. The Houston Astros lead with a record of 38-20. Although their second place is a tie as well, 8.5 games behind each. The Texas Rangers and the Oakland Athletics. And that's followed by the Los Angeles Angels and Seattle in that order. Now let's look at the National League. The National League East. The Philadelphia Phillies lead with a record of 33-24. Atlanta's just behind them, 3 games behind, with a record of 30-27. And the rest of the division rounds out the New York Mets, then the Washington Nationals, then the Miami Marlins. In the National League Central, the Chicago Cubs lead with a record of 31-24. Behind them, only a half game behind, are the Milwaukee Brewers with a record of 32-26. So that one is very contentious. In fact, the division altogether is fairly close. But behind Milwaukee is Pittsburgh, then St. Louis, and then Cincinnati. In that order. And finally, let's look at the NL East. The Los Angeles Dodgers lead with a record of 39-19. The next closest team behind them is the San Diego Padres, but they're behind by 8.5 games with a record of 30-27. Then we have the Colorado Rockies, then the Arizona Diamondbacks, and finally the San Francisco Giants, in that order. And that's currently the Major League Baseball standings. Now, I believe Premier League ended. I don't think it has, like, playoffs. But let's take a quick look. Just to make sure. Champion League. Well, they have a look at the Champions League. Which is a final Champions League final preview, Liverpool or Tottenham. So I guess they are in kind of their playoffs. Da, 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 da. news. Yeah, final the UEFA Championship or Champions League. All time shown local. So today, Tottenham and Liverpool. Was Tottenham in there? Well, it says Spurs, so is that Tottenham? Yeah, Tottenham. It must be them, the Spurs. Tottenham and Liverpool in the championship, according to what I'm seeing. Anyway, to look at that, yeah, Premier League championship final, Champions final, I should say. Champions League final, Premier Liverpool or Tottenham. So yeah, Tottenham faces Liverpool for the Champions final, Champions League final. So anyway, that gives us sports. Let's take a look at science. She blinded me with science. And it's taking its time to load on up. There it is. Tempering dendritic cell activation. Researchers strap video cameras on 16 cats and let them do their thing. That's what they found. Let's see. Setting micro robots up for success in stem cell therapy. Scientists tackle burning question. When will our own sun... I was reading that. When will our quiet sun turn violent? Well, we know at some point it's going to expand. It's still, I think, a few million years down the line, but I can't remember what they said the date was. Sizing up quakes in their early stages. And a wave of graduate programs drops the GRE application requirement. Interesting. NASA selects 3 companies to lead its robotic return to the moon. Honestly, we need to spend a lot of money on NASA for research and exploration, and probably just for founding colonies on other planets. I mean, honestly, at this point, we should have colonies on Mars. But it's like, we don't want to put the money into it to really develop these ideas. Exploration and science is fine, but they cost money. And all your endless wars don't. Oh, but we've got to feed Halliburton and Northrop Grumman and Boeing. Anyway, let's continue our look at science here. That was from sciencemag.org. Let's look at sciencenews.org. Scroll down a bit. Oh, there we go. Thousands of birds perished in the Bering Sea. Arctic warming may be to blame. Cave debris may be the oldest known example of people eating starch. There's the little thing. Fossils reveal saber-toothed cats may have pierced their rival skulls. Huh. Watch the oldest surviving film of a total solar eclipse. A fungus weaponized with spider toxin can kill malaria mosquitoes. That's interesting. Africa's first herders spread pastoralism by mating with foragers. Vaping the sweeter sucralose may produce toxic chemicals. Oh, vaping the sweetener sucralose may produce toxic chemicals. Why are you vaping sucralose? Icy volcanoes on Pluto may have spewed organic-rich water. Himalayan glacier melting threatens water security for millions of people. In a first, scientists took the temperature of a sonic black hole. 100 years ago, an eclipse proved Einstein right. Today, black holes do too. For now. A 50 million year old fossil captures a swimming school of fish. One number can help explain why measles is so contagious. A new optical atomic clock's heart is as small as a coffee bean. How bacteria nearly killed by antibiotics can recover and gain resistance. That's why it's dangerous to just here's antibiotics, keep using this. You know, they do gain resistances. This iconic Humboldt map may need crucial updates. Murray Gell-Mann gave structure to the subatomic world. Shy fish no bigger than a pinky provides much of the food in the coral reefs. Mathematicians report possible progress on proving the Riemann hypothesis. And being bilingual is great, but it may not boost some brain functions. And that is a look at science. I believe the last few I repeated from last weekend, so. Oh well. What are you gonna do? And I'm sorry if I allow too much sun in sometimes. It comes in, I'm trying to sit where I block it. My legs are killing me. Anyway, how about we look at some history? First, 30th, 29th, 28th, 27th, 26th. So yeah, 25. So yeah, some of that was repeated. Let's go back to this day in history. History. Anyway, I don't care about some of the shows on the History Channel because some of them's not actually history. Pawn Stars and what was the other one? Where they went around looking for old stuff. That's not history. Inside America's UFO and guess. You know what? I find the whole UFO thing interesting too. It's not history. Anyway, hop off June, go back to May the 25th. I am going to move this because my leg is killing me. I apologize. Let me make sure I'm not blinding you. Okay. Anyway. On June 25th, in history, Star Wars opens in theaters in 1977. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I don't really care. Mainly now that I wasn't a huge fan of them before, but now that it's a Disney property, I really don't care about them. Close that. I didn't tell you to open that. "1979, 6-year-old Eaton Patz, boy on milk carton, goes missing. On the morning of May the 25th, 1979, 6-year-old, I may be wrong on the pronunciation, Eaton or Eaton Patz, walked the 2 blocks from his home to his bus stop in Manhattan. It was the first time walking there alone before school, and the last day his parents would ever see him. Let's see. What else is going on? 1979, May the 25th. The worst air crash in U.S. history. On a Friday afternoon Memorial Day weekend, American Airlines Flight 191, a Los Angeles-bound DC-10, takes off at 3:03 p.m. from Chicago O'Hare International Airport with 271 aboard. So, yeah. May the 25th, 1660, the English Restoration begins. Under let's see. Under invitation by leaders of the English Commonwealth, Charles II, the exiled King of England, lands at Dover, England, to assume the throne and 11 years of military rule. So it's after the whole Charles Cromwell incident. Hey, I didn't see you say scroll that far. May the 25th, 1787, the Constitutional Convention begins. Four years after the United States won its independence from England, 55 state delegates, including George Washington, James Madison, and Benjamin Franklin, convene in Philadelphia to compose a new U.S. Constitution, the Constitution we now have. Up to that point, we'd been running on the Articles of Confederation. Let's see, what else? May the 25th, 1994, Pennsylvania man buried with his beloved Corvette. On this day in 1994, the ashes of 71-year-old George Swanson are buried, according to Swanson's request, in the driver's seat of his 1984 white Corvette in Hempfield County, Pennsylvania. Oh, goodness gracious. May the 25th, 1935, Babe Ruth hits his last home run. On May the 25th, 1935, at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Babe Ruth hits his 714th home run, a record for career home runs that would stand for almost 40 years. This was one of Ruth's last games and the last home run of his career. May the 25th, 1961, John F. Kennedy asked Congress to support the space program. On this day in 1961, President John F. Kennedy announces to Congress his goal of sending an American to the moon by the end of the decade and asks for financial support of an accelerated space program. Let's see. And May the 25th, 1861, President Abraham Lincoln suspends the writ of habeas corpus during the Civil War. John Merriman, a state legislator from Maryland, is arrested for attempting to hinder Union troops from moving from Baltimore to Washington during the Civil War and is held at Fort McHenry by Union military officials. His attorney immediately sought a writ of habeas corpus. Come on, load up. His attorney immediately sought a writ of habeas corpus so that a federal court could examine the charges. However, President Abraham Lincoln decided to suspend the right of habeas corpus and the general in command of Fort McHenry refused to turn Merryman over to the authorities. And of course, habeas corpus is something that granted usually to all American citizens. It's based in Latin. Definition says, a writ requiring a person under arrest to be brought before a judge or into court, especially to secure the person's release, unless lawful grounds are shown for their detention. So, after their arrest, they are to be brought before the judge for acknowledgement. That's usually when they'll set a bail. And it's usually granted to all Americans the legal right to apply for habeas corpus. So, yeah. Anyway, let's look at May the 26th. Come on now. There you go. It didn't want to work with me. May the 26th, 1897. The first copies of the classic vampire novel Dracula by Irish writer Bram Stoker appear in London bookshops. So, yeah. For horror fans, May the 26th is a good day. It's when Dracula first went on sale. Come on, computer, work with me. I said work with me, not go backwards. There we go. May the 26th, 1868. President Andrew Johnson is acquitted of the impeachment charges levied against him by the House of Representatives 3 months earlier. As we know, President Andrew Johnson was the first American president to be impeached, but he survived impeachment. So far, we haven't managed to remove a president through impeachment. President Johnson was the first one ever to go into impeachment. He survived. Of course, he was the first. He was president under after Lincoln because he was Lincoln's vice president when Lincoln was shot. But the second president would be Bill Clinton. Richard Nixon resigned before he could be impeached. So yeah, Bill Clinton would be the second, and of course he was never removed. And we may have a third one with how things are going with Trump. May the 26th, 1637. The Pequot massacres begin. During the Pequot War, an allied Puritan and Mohegan force under the English captain John Mason attacks a Pequot village in Connecticut, burning or massacring some 500 Native American women, men, and children. May the 26th, 1896. Tsar Nicholas II crowned. I believe he was the last Tsar in Russia, because the Bolshevik Revolution would be in about 1914 or so. So yeah. Yeah, Nicholas II, the last Tsar. So May the 26th, 1927, last day of Model T production at Ford. On this day in 1927, Henry Ford and his son Edsel drive the 15 millionth Model T Ford out of their factory, making the famous automobile's official last day of production. Marking the official last day. My apologies. May the 26th, 1924. Calvin Coolidge signs the Immigration Act of 1924. On this date, President Calvin Coolidge signs into law the Immigration Act of 1924, the most stringent U.S. immigration policy up to that time in the nation's history. The new law reflected the desire of Americans to isolate themselves from the world after fighting World War I. So, yeah, hate of immigration is not anything new. It comes and goes in the U.S. May the 26th, 1865, one of the last Confederate generals surrenders. Confederate General Edmund Kirby Smith, commander of the Confederate Trans-Mississippi Division, surrenders on May the 26th, 1865, one of the last Confederate generals to capitulate. Now, let's look at May the 27th. Come on, computer. I really need to work with you. You seem slow as can be. May the 27th, 1939. Ship carrying 937 Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany is turned away in Cuba. Is that the one that was also carrying Anne Frank? Stupid advertisement. It doesn't mention anything. But I know, yeah, it's not the first time we turned away Jewish refugees in the U.S. We're supposed to be the land of freedom, but we don't give a damn. But what are you going to do for us? America sometimes can be full of greedy assholes, honestly. Let's see. May the 27th, 1905, the Battle of Tsushima Strait. During the Russo-Japanese War, the Russian Baltic Fleet is nearly destroyed at the Battle of Tsushima Strait. The decisive defeat, in which only 10 of 45 Russian warships escaped to safety, convinced Russian leaders that further resistance against Japan's imperial designs. Yeah, it kind of falls off. It says read more. But yeah, Japan was growing a mighty navy. They were trying to catch up with the rest of the world, and they were making big progress. In World War One, they were allies, but World War Two, they weren't. And it was kind of feared because they actually had a fairly decent navy. May the 27th, 1703, St. Petersburg, founded by Peter the Great. May the 27th, 1941, FDR proclaims an unlimited national emergency in response to Nazi threats. Franklin D. Roosevelt announces a state of unlimited national emergency in response to Nazi Germany's threats of world domination on May the 27th in 1941. Let's see what else is going on. May the 27th, 1863, Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus is challenged. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney of Maryland sues ex parte Merriman, challenging the authority of President Abraham Lincoln and the U.S. military to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. So even then, it was a big issue. Quit trying to pop up recommendations. I don't want to see them. May the 28th. Let's see what happened on May the 28th. Come on, scroll on down. Scroll on down. I said scroll on down. There you go, you little goofball. Come on. First of all, let's close out recommendations. I don't care about that. I'm just looking at the history. I hate when they try to put in so many ads and junk. I'm like, come on, people. I know that's your prerogative, but it's not mine. May the 28th, 2010, terrorist attack Ahmadiyya mosques in Pakistan. As Friday prayers came to a close on May the 28th, 2010 in Lahore, Pakistan, 7 terrorists wielding guns, grenades, and suicide vests stormed into crowded Ahmadi Muslim mosques and opened fire, killing 94 victims and injuring more than 120. And Facebook, would you quit giving me alerts? I'm trying to do stuff. Alright. Let's see what else happened on the 28th. May the 28th, 1964, Palestine Liberation Organization is founded. May the 28th, in 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization was founded. In February of '69, Yasser Arafat was elected as its leader. By '74, when he addressed the United Nations, Arafat had made significant strides toward establishing new respectability for the PLO's campaign. May the 28th, 1754, First Blood of the French and Indian War, or as it's known in the U.S. sometimes, the 7 Years' War. Or is that in Britain, the 7 Years' War? It's the same thing. 7 Years' War, French-Indian War. In the first engagement of the French and Indian War, a Virginia militia under 22-year-old Lieutenant Colonel George Washington defeats a French reconnaissance party in southwestern Pennsylvania. Let's see, where else? What else do we have? May the 28th, 1863, African American Regiment departs for combat. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry, the most famous African American regiment during the Civil War, leaves Boston for combat in the South. Quit popping up notifications. I'm trying to do stuff. Alright. Let's see. May the 29th. There's a reason I have my ad blocker on. They have that little post. It's not you, it's your ad blocker. There's a reason I have my ad blocker. Anyway, May the 29th, 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reach Mount Everest summit. Come on, scroll down. Really? You're gonna be a pain in my butt? March the 29th, or not March, May the 29th, 1932. Bonus marchers arrive in Washington, D.C. At the height of the Great Depression, the so-called Bonus Expeditionary Force, a group of 1,000 World War I veterans seeking cash payments for their veterans bonus certificates, arrive in Washington, D.C. Yeah, at one time we did not take care of our troops as well as we do now. Let's see, what else? What else? May the May the 29th, 1914. Ships crash in heavy fog. Heavy fog causes a collision of boats in the St. Lawrence River in Canada that kills 1,073 people. It was one of the worst maritime disasters in history. May the 29th, 2005. Danica Patrick becomes the first woman to lead in an Indy 500. 23-year-old Danica Patrick becomes the first female driver ever to take the lead in the storied Indianapolis 500. May the 29th, 1942. The Jews in Paris are forced to sew a yellow star on their coats. On the advice of Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler orders all Jews in occupied Paris to wear an identifying yellow star on the left side of their coats. Joseph Goebbels had made the persecution and ultimately extermination of Jewish people a priority. And I think that's it for the 29th. Let's scroll up. Quit trying to pop recommendations up there. May the 30th. Let's see. Would you? Really? May the 30th, 1431, Joan of Arc is burned at the stake for heresy. She claimed to be told by God or Jesus or whatever to fight for the French. And she led very inspired victories. England finally captured her and say, no, we follow the proper idea of religion. She's a witch. It's heresy. And she was, of course, burned at the stake. Personally, I don't believe any religion is factual. Come on, scroll on down. There you go. Yeah. May the 30th, 1963, Leslie Gore sings It's My Party on American Bandstand. New Jersey teenager named Leslie Gore makes her first appearance on American Bandstand singing her hit to be It's My Party. And of course, her real name was Leslie Sue Goldstein, and she was just a few weeks past her own 17th birthday. If you know anything about the song, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to, cry if I want to. You would cry too if it happened to you. Yeah, anyway. May the 30th, 1806. Andrew Jackson wins duel. It's when we still dueled. In Logan County, Kentucky, future President Andrew Jackson participates in a duel, killing Charles Dickinson, a lawyer regarded as one of the best pistol shots in the area. May the 30th, 1922, former President Taft dedicates the Lincoln Memorial. Former President William Howard Taft dedicates the Lincoln Memorial in the Washington Mall on this day in 1922. At the time, Taft was serving as a Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Yeah. Howard Taft was Vice President under Theodore Roosevelt. He would be president after, but Roosevelt came back after the first term and said, I don't think you're running the country correctly, and he tries to form the Bull Moose Party. And of course, that's when Woodrow Wilson takes effect, because there's such a clash between Taft and Roosevelt that in voting numbers that Woodrow Wilson gets elected. But yeah, William Howard Taft was a vice president, a president, a chief justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Most people just remember him for getting stuck in the White House bathtub, but he was actually one of the better presidents we ever had. People talk about Roosevelt breaking up monopolies, talking softly and carried a big stick, but William Howard Taft actually broke up more monopolies than Roosevelt did. Anyway, see what else happened. I don't see anything else worth talking about. And finally, let's look at May the 31st. This video's already been an hour long. Wow. I guess I've really gotten into talking about some of the history and stuff, though. Come on now. Work with me, computer. May the 31st, 1859, Big Ben rings out over London for the first time. Of course, it is a famous icon of the London landscape. Quit suggesting crap. May the 31st, 1889, the Johnstown flood. In a river valley in central Pennsylvania, heavy rain and a neglected dam lead to a catastrophe. Catastrophe. I was about to say catastrophic. Lead to a catastrophe in which 2,209 people die, and a prosperous city, Johnstown, is nearly wiped off the face of the earth. May the 31st. This is an important cultural moment. May the 31st, 1977. The BBC bans the Sex Pistols song God Save the Queen. 30 years after its release, John Lydon, better known as Johnny Rotten, offered his assessment of the song that made the Sex Pistols the most reviled and revered figures in England in the spring of 1977. May the 31st, 1902, the Boer War ends in South Africa. And of course, it was between Great Britain and the Boers. I guess it kind of led to British rule in South Africa at that point. Alright, what else have we got going on? I don't see too much. And that's it for this day in history. let's open up the news as well as my top 10 idiots of the week. There it is, top 10 idiots. Let's look at the news of the week. For Saturday, on Philip DeFranco, we have a look at the American opioid crisis and the role the company Indivior has played with a tactic of product hopping. Basically, when one copyright is about to run out on it. It's not called copyright. Is it a copyright? It isn't a copyright. It's the right to use the product first for so long. But when it's getting ready to run out, they say, oh, we'll create a new version and get it marked so we'll have it for so much longer. Even though the other product was perfectly fine. But it's all to make money. On Secular Talk, Kyle looks at the Arkansas Public TV refusing to run an episode of Arthur that included a gay wedding. He looks at Saudi Arabia sentencing 3 moderate Sunni scholars to death, as well as looking at the right-wing tactic of using non-experts to pose as scientific experts. On Status Quo, Jordan looks at Bernie Sanders fighting alongside McDonald's workers. And he looks at the New York Times trying once again to smear Bernie by trying to spread fear about socialism and how Nicaragua was fighting back against American insurgencies, while Bernie so happened to be in the country trying to help people. They try their best to spread fear and hate about Bernie. They just do not like the man. On the Humanist Report, if I can get my computer to work with me, Mike Figueredo points out the buffoonish push by one Democratic candidate for mass military recruitment. I mean, really? Mass military recruitment? We honestly should be cutting back our wars. Our military, there's more spent on our military than any other. It's spent like 11 times higher than the next highest combined. It spends more than the next 10 or 11 combined. So we already need to cut it down, not go for mass recruiting. On the Rational National, David Dole talks about the resignation of Theresa May and the attempt to smear Bernie Sanders by Politico. So not only New York Times trying to smear him, Politico. Tim Black TV. Tim looks at the smear piece against Bernie Sanders that tries to say that because he is now a millionaire, he no longer fights for the people. Really? He still fights for the people. He goes out and protests with the McDonald's workers. He only made money because of profit he got from selling a book about his run, about his beliefs. Quit trying to smear the man. On Vice News, a look at Jay Inslee's presidential run that focuses primarily on climate change, and a look at the fake Instagram supermodels who are just computer programs. They're digitized. And on Democracy Now!, they take a look at how the press has failed to protect Chelsea Manning or WikiLeaks. For Sunday, on Philip DeFranco, we have a look at the training and use of giant pouch rats to detect landmines for removal and detonation. From Secular Talk, we have a look at Trump's tendency to change how numbers are calculated in topics such as the economy and energy plans. On Status Quo, Jordan interviews Jimmy Dore, and they talk about how the media tries to smear Bernie Sanders, and he talks about the drumbeat to war with Iran. On Vice News, we get a look at the politics tied to Eurovision being held in Israel, even though Israel would rather ignore those politics. Democracy Now! Video clips that talk about how the Assange indictment threatens freedom, and the other talks. The other videos talk about the dangers in generic drugs. And on The Intercept, we get a look again at the two sides of Israel as the Eurovision competition takes place there. Now, on Monday, on Philip DeFranco, we get a thank you to those that served on Memorial Day. We get a look at the attempts to have unpaid interns. And there's questions if the San Francisco police violated the SHIELD law. And finally, he talks about the EU elections. On Secular Talk, we get a look at which Democrats made the debates. We look at the effects of the Assange indictment. We look at the banning of anti-Trump social media stars on Twitter. We look at the raising of defense spending. As I said, we've already got the highest in the world. And Trump's rollback of anti-discrimination laws that protected transgender people. On Status Quo, we get a video about how Native Americans have gained a huge win on treaty rights through a Supreme Court battle. From the Rational National, Bernie Sanders pushes back against warmonger Bill Kristol and MSNBC's attempt to craft a narrative against Bernie by publishing the wrong numbers in polls. And when it was brought to their attention, they said, "We'll not publish that poll, period." Because they want to make it seem as if Bernie is struggling. On the MCSC network, a look at how the Huffington Post attacked Tulsi Gabbard. A look at Tulsi when she calls out the establishment on Memorial Day. A look at sources who are saying California Democrats are already looking to purge voter registrations. And a look at the New York Times attacks on Bernie Sanders. And on C-SPAN, we get a video of Mike Pence at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Now, on Tuesday, Philip DeFranco shows Iggy Azalea threatens a lawsuit after professional nude pics that she had taken for GQ were leaked. Netflix picks a side in the boycott on Georgia, and Mount Everest sees a climber traffic jam that is resulting in some deaths. From Secular Talk, Kyle Kulinski looks at how Trump declared an emergency just so he could sell Saudi Arabia more weapons without going through Congress. Trump wants to run on healthcare in 2020, and Cornel West just dismantles Fox News and their talking points. From the Humanist Report, Mike talks about Bernie Sanders pushing back on Bill Kristol. From the Rational National, David points out how Biden skipped out on being with voters to be with big donors. And 2 former Canadian MPs running independently after being fired by Justin Trudeau. From Tim Black TV, Joey Behar and Whoopi Goldberg work to defend Joe Biden's 1994 crime bill. I mean, come on. It's already been admitted that it's a mistake by other politicians of the era. From PBS Frontline, we get a clip about a survivor of sex trafficking. From Vice News, the mistakes of Brexit that led to the resignation of Theresa May, plus a video looking at the pro-life Democrats and recovery from wildfires. From MCSC Network, we get a look at the Huffington Post, and how it smeared Nico House in order to attack Tulsi Gabbard. And we see Rachel Maddow suddenly sees Julian Assange as a journalist. Honestly, I don't see him as a journalist. I see him as a whistleblower. I've already explained this. I had someone else try to decry on Facebook. He's a journalist. He publishes this news. I'm like, Einstein publishes scientific works. That doesn't make him a journalist. From Democracy Now! They look at the European Union elections and talk to Ben Jealous about the promise to clear loan debt at Morehouse College. And from C-SPAN, video of Representative Massey blocking the disaster relief bill. On Wednesday, from Philip DeFranco, T-Series finally did surpass PewDiePie as the most subscribed to YouTube channel. India ends up arresting some gamers for playing PUBG. Tommy Lahren gets triggered over a Gillette commercial. And Mueller tries to better explain his findings and report. From Secular Talk, the stories Kyle looks at includes a school blurring the Trump logo from a teen's hat in a picture. Andrew Yang and Laura Ingraham debate universal basic income and the economy. And then a GOP congressman lies saying Medicare for all would double taxes. From Status Quo, Jordan looks at Joe Biden fundraising with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hating GOP donor. And Biden, he talks about Biden touching an uncomfortable little girl. Because as we know, he recently decided to put his shoulders on a 10-year-old girl. Says, "You're so pretty and smart." Why is he a candidate? Why is he in the lead even more so? Anyway, from the Humanist Report, Mike talks about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defending Bernie Sanders after Politico's hit piece. And he talks about Trump using the same strategy on Biden that he used to beat Hillary Clinton. From the Rational National, the Canadian Green Party offers leadership positions to the two fired MPs. And Trump proves Nancy Pelosi's unwillingness to impeach him. From Frontline PBS, a look at how Mitch McConnell rigged the Supreme Court through less than appetizing tactics. From Vice News, a look at Andrew Yang and universal basic income. They look at the current state of the NRA and impeachment politics. And a look at the Mueller press conference and what it means for Congress. From the MCSC network, an interview with City Council nominee Ora Vasquez, as well as a look at how Bernie may have been smeared for being Jewish. Honestly? Really? I'm telling you, they do not like the man. They want to do their best to keep a candidate that's for the people out. From Democracy Now!, Ben Jealous talks about the need for free public universities. A look at Missouri's last abortion clinic facing closure. A look at Scott Warren arrested and facing 20 years for providing immigrants with food and water. 20 years for providing food and water to immigrants. So backwards. And the criminalization of humanitarian aid near the border. From C-SPAN, Robert Mueller's press conference and Jerry Nadler's statement on the Mueller report. Thursday, from Philip DeFranco, Cardi B is canceling shows due to plastic surgery. An attempt by the mainstream media to claim the internet influencer bubble was bursting. Disney, Universal, and Warner will likely join the growing protest of Georgia. And Israel fails to form a government, setting the elections back in motion. From Secular Talk, Kyle looks at the Mueller report and impeachment and looks at Bernie Sanders telling Bill Kristol to apologize for the Iraq War. Status Coup. From Status Coup, Jordan examines the lack of enthusiasm for Biden. He looks at the push for impeachment, and he looks at why CNN is not disclosing their financial ties to Kamala Harris. From the Humanist Report, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren break their silence on Assange. Plus, Tulsi Gabbard attacks Trump's warmongering of Iran. From the Rational National, MSNBC airs voter critiques of Biden, and Meghan McCain and Elizabeth Warren clash over Fox News. From Tim Black TV, Tim gives his opinion of the Mueller news conference. From Vice News, Paradise Fire survivors now fear poisoned water. On the front lines of Libya's civil war, and Europe's right wing wins and the American Taliban. From the MCSC network, a look at election rigging on both sides. Will Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorse Elizabeth Warren? And Cornel West puts Candace Owens and Laura Ingraham to shame on Fox News. From Democracy Now!, Palestinian diplomat Hanan Ashrawi on the U.S. peace plan. Oklahoma court case accuses Johnson & Johnson of being drug kingpins. And the Trump administration's delay of putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. And from C-SPAN, President Trump's reaction to Robert Mueller's statement. And on Friday, on Philip DeFranco, we get a closer look at Libya's civil war. On Secular Talk, Cenk Uygur really torches Pelosi in the pages of a mainstream publication. Bernie wants democracy in the workplace, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is compared to Kim Jong-un? On Status Coup, CNN fails to acknowledge their ties to Kamala Harris. A man kills himself after the insurance cancels his policy for missing $20, for not paying $20. They cancel it. It's why we need to get rid of damn insurance. They screw over this country so much. They have screwed this country over so much. And Bernie pushes back on the crowning of Joe Biden. From the Humanist Report, mainstream media wants to slander Bernie so bad, their attempts at scandals are trivial at best. From the Rational National, pro-impeachment Republican gets ovation, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ted Cruz plan to work together. And lastly, from Democracy Now!, remembering Dr. George Tiller 10 years after his assassination in an abortion clinic. Now, for a little bit of fun, let's look at the 10 idiots of the week. And because I forgot to add them, but he deserves to be on the list. Bill Kristol, for still being a warmongering moron. Really, Bill, you should apologize. You need to apologize for Iraq. But let's get to the rest of these. Bibi Netanyahu, for being such an ass that he couldn't form an actual party coalition, setting the elections back in motion. Joe Biden, for once again showing he can't keep his hands to himself. Chris Stewart, for lying and saying that Medicare for all would double taxes. Tommy Lahren, for being triggered over a Gillette commercial because it was teaching a transgender individual how to shave. The right wing are always so triggered. It's ridiculous. Charles Davis, for his smear article on Nico House and Tulsi Gabbard. Candace Owens, for trying to trap Cornel West on Fox News. The same for Laura Ingraham, for trying to trap Cornel West on that same segment on Fox News. They tried to double team him and catch him, see if they could trap him somehow. But he just, no, I'm going to speak facts and the truth, and there isn't anything you all can do. And he just shut them down. Chuck Todd, for helping to push MSNBC's fake narrative that Bernie Sanders is struggling. Jake Paul, for advertising for unpaid interns. And Donald Trump, as usual, for being the moron he usually is. That was an uber long video for a week in review. I apologize for the immense length. I guess I had to rant a bit, but anyway, as always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Don't be a moron like those who watch Fox News or on Fox News. And I'll see y'all again in the next video. But until then, later.